Hi, folks. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great, I'm doing wonderfully. Yeah, how is the moving in going?
Woohoo! You know, it's amazing how much junk I have. I cannot get over it.
You're supposed to clear that stuff out before you move.
Exactly. And there's a town-wide garage sale or yard sale on Saturday, and I'm actually going to participate in part to get rid of moving boxes. But I'm also going to throw some clothes and things that I did move but actually do not need into that heap.
That's great. That's so funny. Wow. It's funny how inevitably that's what happens, right? Yeah. You get there and you're thinking, I don't have a place. Either you don't have a place for this, or you're thinking, why did I think this was important?
Exactly. And part of it, so I went to the office today. I went on campus and took
How exciting.
12 boxes of things that I packed from my old office, and I packed in a hurry, so I didn't have time to sort through files and decide what I didn't need. I just threw things into file boxes. So I've got all these boxes there that I will purge over time.
It's funny.
Yeah. It makes me think back to, I think it was in the 70s, George Carlin came out with this whole skit that he did about stuff and about how we have so much stuff. And we get bigger houses to house all of our stuff.
And in fact, we're actually gonna talk about stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe that will be helpful. I don't know.
I'm just going to be embarrassed. I'll just hide under the desk here.
No, we all have it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
There's some good learning that I've learned as well over time, and still learning and thinking about what I'm bringing into my home. I think obviously it's a mindful practice. So.
Right. No, you're right. So a funny thing is I opened a box that was marked keepsakes and memorabilia. So I slid it open, and it's one of those boxes that I moved from Iowa to central Pennsylvania. I never opened it there, right? So I finally am opening it. So I haven't seen it in 2 years.
Yeah.
So I opened this box, and there's this cute little plaque in there, which has I can't even remember, some pithy little saying. And I have no idea who it's from.
Oh,
okay, this is no longer memorabilia when you don't remember it.
That's good. You have a whole stand-up routine already going.
Yes, you're right.
That's awesome.
Oh goodness.
So we're waiting. I know Karen's going to be a little late, and we have some new folks. Cecilia, are you here? You can certainly unmute yourself. I don't know if you want to show video. We'd love to see you if that's possible. Is it Dina or Deanna?
It's Deanna.
Deanna. Okay,
yeah.
Good. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to. I mean, you're welcome to your video to stay muted. I always think that on Zoom we have the capacity to actually see each other, so that's always a benefit, but it may not feel like a benefit to you, at which point feel free to to mute your video whenever. But welcome, glad to have you. Yeah. And Cecilia also. And we have I think one more new person tonight. I see there's Samsung SM. I don't know whose that is. Samsung. It's just coming up as Samsung SM G930A. Anybody? Wonder if that's somebody's phone. It could be. Okay, well, I know there's going to be more folks joining us, and Kiva's not joining us tonight. She's got her mom in town, so she's really excited about that.
Cool.
But so we will just dive in. We've got plenty to do in the short time we have together. I would love we'll go around once again and have folks just introduce themselves and where in the country you are currently, maybe where you're from. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Wonderful. Good to see you. Yeah. So I was just saying that we're going to go around, and we have several new folks tonight. And so it would be nice to, and this will be it. So after tonight, I'm not going to accept any new folks in. You know, you may miss a meeting or something, and that's fine. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying, like, in terms of, you know, we're building something here and we're building community, and I want to make sure that everyone feels sort of as safe as possible in that space. So hopefully folks have had a chance to look at or review or go through the materials from the week 1 course. And that included our community guidelines for engagement. And so we're definitely going to be, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at those, you might want to scroll over there while we're chatting here, while we're talking, just so you can see, you know, just make sure everybody's on the same page. If you have access to that, in terms of how we're going to be in the space together. So I would love to go around, and what I've been doing is I will read your name, because I'm just going to go in order, that way we don't miss anybody and we're not waiting with all the dead space of somebody who's ready to go next. So if we were in person, it would be much easier in terms of people would just pipe in. But in this context, it's easier for me to just kind of lead that process. So hopefully that works for folks. So I'm going to start with Georgina. If you would just, you know, introduce yourself and also say where you're from. And you may even share, if you feel like it, and if you don't, you can always feel free to just pass on this one. But if you feel comfortable sharing your intention for the course, what we came up with last week, that might get us back into the spirit of what we're doing here, and also helps you to revisit, you know, where we're headed. Yeah.
Sounds good. So I'm Georgina Dodge. I'm in Maryland. I'm at the University of Maryland in College Park, so just right outside of DC. I have been here for all of a couple weeks now. I'm moving in. Deanna, I'm looking at your space and the beautiful bookshelf behind you in the sky, and you see my empty bookshelf behind me. I haven't unpacked the books yet. So I'm feeling a little bit of envy right now. But I'm really looking forward to getting to know all of you and having conversation and learning from you. And the intention that I have set seems kind of simple, but actually isn't for me specifically. And that is simply to establish an ongoing, consistent meditation process, which is something I've done in the past, bless you, have not been very successful at doing recently. And I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but sometimes it's just because I don't think about it. Mm-hmm. The day gets busy, it gets full, and I just don't think about it. So that is my intention.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. Holly, I'm going to ask you to go next. So if you can unmute yourself. And I will ask folks to mute themselves in between. Just, you know, just so that if there's background noises or whatever, that might be, it's a good way to calm that down. Holly, are you available?
I'm unmuted. Now you can hear me.
Hi, yes.
Hi, everybody. And I am in Denver, Colorado. And in terms of intention, can I say ditto after Georgina? Thank you, Georgina. You really articulated the very, yeah, I wanna meditate on a daily basis. And like you, yes, I have done that before in my life. And it's really important for me, given a project I'm working on, to have that. I was going to say the word discipline, but there's a part of me that goes with that word discipline, but it is. It is. So that's kind of like one of the terms I want to look at and talk about, but that's my intention.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks. let's go to, it's Cindy or Cynthia, I think. Let's unmute you.
Oh, sorry, it's Kathy.
Kathy, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I see the C.
Hi, I'm in Longmont, Colorado, which is outside Boulder, and I'm a high school teacher. And my intention is also to really try and be consistent, even if it's just for a short period of time every day, and also to try and practice more gentleness and ease and just cultivating some enjoyment and relaxation this summer after a really difficult and traumatic school year.
Okay, yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna put in Kathy here so that everybody, I'm sorry, I messed that up too. Okay. I don't know if everybody will see that change, but okay. And then Karen, hi, you made it, awesome. So we're sharing our name and our intention that we set. Yeah, for the course from last week, if you feel like sharing that, and where you are, geographically. We need to unmute you. I got you. Why is it not unmuting? Maybe you need to, there you go.
I got it. I'm Karen Mitchell, and I am currently in St. Louis at my cousin's and on vacation. Had a beautiful day today. My intention for the class is to keep the rest of my life in balance so nothing interferes with my work on the class, which is kind of an immediate intention. And I hope that will then spill over into the semester so that things don't get derailed, that my mindfulness work will stay
Wonderful.
where I want it to be, which is at the forefront of my life.
Beautiful, thank you. Thanks for sharing that, yeah. Let's go to Deanna.
Hi, I'm a high school teacher in Aurora, Colorado, but I'm currently in Nantucket, staying with my in-laws for the month. So that's my mother-in-law's bookshelf that you see behind me there. My intentions for the course, I guess, are kind of twofold. Just personally trying to establish a mindfulness practice and use that to calm anxiety and be a more present parent and spouse. And then professionally, I've been digging a lot into being really intentional about culturally responsive teaching. And so looking at how I can incorporate social justice practices in my classroom and weave it into my curriculum in science. So that's my intention.
Fabulous, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. Cecilia.
Thank you. So delighted to be a part of the call this evening. I'm Cecilia Loving, and I am from New York City, from Brooklyn. I am actually in Denver today. So really excited about being here for the Restorative Justice Practices conference that's being held here. I'm going to have an opportunity to speak on restorative practices while I'm here. And my mindfulness intention for the course is to incorporate mindfulness through better self-care, through more mindful sleeping and moving and loving and speaking and creating and eating and being.
Lovely, that's beautiful, thank you, appreciate you. And I'm not sure the last person we have on the call, is that Angela?
It is.
Oh, great. We're still waiting for one more, and that's why I wasn't sure because it didn't have your name, but I think if you're okay, I'll put your name on there so that we know that's you.
Sounds good.
Okay, I can do that while you're doing your thing.
My name is Angela, and I am kind of sick today. That's why I'm not showing my face. I am in Denver, Colorado, and Cecilia said it wonderfully. Everything she said, I ditto that. And I'd also want to add that I would like to give myself permission to be vulnerable and to be able to open up fully and authentically in a mindfulness practice.
That's beautiful too. Wow, thank you. Thank you all so much. And welcome. Welcome to the course again. And welcome for those who are new. Welcome to you. So honored to have you all here and excited to dive in today. I would love to know, we're gonna start, actually we'll do it this way. We're gonna start with a little mindfulness practice to get us situated in the room. And as I mentioned last week, each time we meet, I'm gonna try to add on, I'm going to give you lots of different practices. So there are 25 in the book, 25 mindfulness practices in the book. And then there's also activities and everything else. But as we come together each week, I'm gonna give you more so that by the time we're done with the course, you'll have a whole, backpack full. I mean, you'll have all kinds of tools to be considering, what do I want to incorporate from here on out. So if you would find yourself in a seated position that works for you, I always suggest if it's available to you in your body to put your feet on the floor. That is lovely. That's a wonderful practice to feel the energy from the earth grounding you. And just notice where your body is right now. Notice your breath. And if you're comfortable closing your eyes, feel free to do so now. If not, feel free to gaze down. And I would suggest roughly gently gazing about a foot in front of you. Not a stare or a glare, but just a gentle gaze. And notice your breath. We always come back to the breath as an anchor. And as I mentioned last week, if there is another anchor that you prefer to use in your body or to use for you, feel free to just focus on that and allow the peace that whatever your anchor brings to you to just resonate throughout your body, reverberating just a positive, peaceful energy. Notice if there's any troubled spots in your body or perhaps on your mind right now. And I invite you on your inhale to just focus on that space or place in your body or in your mind. And as you inhale, just really focus deeply. And then as you exhale, breathe some space, some grace, some love, a little bit of TLC into that space. And at your own pace, do that a couple of times. Just find if there's any areas in your body that feel tight, or if you have any kind of emotional challenges that are coming up for you, just breathe some love into that space. And then notice too that our days is the end of a Thursday. I'm sure everybody's week was what it was, good, bad, or indifferent, but always a lot. We're usually handling a lot. And so I'm going to invite you now to take your hand, whichever your dominant hand, and place it over your heart. And then if you would, just notice your breath and try to breathe into your hand. So you're basically, this is a heart opener. So allowing your hand to push forward as you breathe in. You're filling up your lungs, your heart is opening, it's expanding. Your hand is being pushed out. And then as you exhale, again, your hand is being pulled back in towards you. A couple of rounds of that. And then I'd like you to focus on the words, I am enough. Your hand is on your heart, and your hand is serving the purpose of saying, I got you. One more deep inhale and exhale. Release. Go ahead and let your hand lower. If your eyes are closed, you can go ahead and flutter them open. And welcome back. So I'd love to hear how that was for you. If anybody wants to share what their experience was of that particular practice, whether that felt like it resonated for you or it didn't, I'd love to hear. It's good to share. Just make sure you unmute yourself.
I'll share. It's Cecilia.
Mm-hmm.
It was just very powerful for me. It was exactly what I needed. And I just love that phrase, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we don't say that to ourselves enough, right? Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else would like to share?
This is Angela.
Hi, Angela.
This was very timely and it resonated with me, especially having to say to myself, I am enough. For the past few days, I've just been running ragged, trying to be enough for other people, other people, and not really taking care of myself. So this is the first time that I've had an opportunity to be mindful of myself and take care of myself. So I very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Holly. I appreciate the first of all, the hand on the heart and feeling the rhythmic beating of my heart. It was very powerful. And I just saw a super, super sad movie. So I had some fear that I was going to be gushing from the film because I had to leave it before it was over to get here on time. It's called Ghost Fleet, and it's just really, really powerfully sad. Yeah, it was a good calmer, and thank you. And that I am enough sentence is very powerful and reminded me of the 12-step work I've done a lot of, and I kept on having to remind myself of that. Thank you.
Thanks. Great. Okay. Anyone else want to share?
Yes. I'm coming up on the 2-year anniversary of Harry's death. And today is the 2-year anniversary of when we decided to marry. So, you know, we've been together for 17 and a half years, but we just hadn't been ready to join our lives that completely. And that I am enough was a reminder that even though, you know, he's no longer with me, that I am enough to have a full, complete, exciting life. I have all the resources I need within me to move someplace new and start over if that's what I decide that I want. And that was a wonderful gift. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. That's beautiful too. Oh, I'm so honored by all of your presence. I mean, you're just deeply engaged, and I just wanted to thank you right now, offer gratitude for that. It's a really beautiful thing. I want to give the opportunity if anybody else wants to share, or would we like to move on? That's either way is fine.
This is Georgina. I want to share as well because I want to thank you back because, I mean, it amazes me. I am a woman who works in a position in which I am supposed to exhibit power, and yet every time I get told that I am enough, it kind of catches me short. It's interesting to me that I need that permission from anyone. And so I appreciate being given it, but I also am left sort of grappling and questioning myself as to why I need that permission rather than just taking it.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. Thank you. And I'll also add that it's the receiving piece, right? That we are taught to be givers. And so what does it mean to receive for ourselves? So we're gonna be delving way deep into that. But for now, just know that's that's coming. That's coming. Yeah. Okay. Others? Okay, I would love to. I do want to just make sure this is sort of a logistical check-in in terms of that everybody is has been able to access the online stuff, and that if you have any issues or problems or whatever, to reach out to me or to Kiva. I think she's been going through info@dinasamuels.com, and so any questions you have or whatever, she can certainly handle. But but hopefully you've been able to access and perhaps take advantage of some of the meditations in particular. And I would love to know, just up until this point, over the course of the last week, how folks are doing. Because again, we talk about this idea of accountability. And wanting to make sure that folks are in fact doing at least 3 minutes a day of meditation for the course, and perhaps you're using the meditations from the website or other meditations that you have access to. Doesn't really matter, as long as you are practicing. You're at least doing each of the meditations that I'm providing at least once throughout the course. But feeling free to go broad with whatever that looks like for you. Karen?
Yes, I had trouble accessing week 2 materials on the course site. I could open week 1, but I could not open week 2.
Okay, it should be available now. Did you try it recently?
I tried it earlier today.
Okay. She did say that it was available, but we will definitely want to troubleshoot if that's the problem.
Did anybody else have trouble?
But folks may not have accessed week 2 quite yet.
Okay.
Oftentimes folks are using week 1 during, we have our week 1 session, and then you do week 1 stuff.
Oh, I didn't understand that.
Oh yeah, no problem, no problem.
Okay,
So
then I was fine.
Okay, then I thought you were asking to just move ahead, which
no, I
yeah.
was confused.
Okay, no worries. So accessing week 1, now, so from today on, you should absolutely be able to access week 2, hopefully.
Great.
And again, if there's any problem with that, let me know. But was there any insights or anything that folks came up with, or how, if you want to do any kind of a check-in, again, thinking about accountability, because that you all have said your intention is to make sure you're doing this every day. So we want to check in and say, how are we doing? Go ahead, Georgina. Oh,
Okay. I saw Kathy raise her hand too. So Kathy, I'll jump in before you. And I miss your cat, by the way. That was a lot of fun. But so I'm a novice at all of this in terms of Facebook. I'm not normally on Facebook. I have an account which I don't ever use. And so I couldn't figure out how to join the community. And I don't know if discussions are happening there, because I would certainly like to further engage with all of you, but I need to figure that out. So maybe Kiva can get a hold of me and let me know what I need to do to make that happen.
Yes, she can absolutely walk you through that. No problem.
Right. Good, good. And one of the things that I also wanted to thank you for was a statement you made last week that really stuck with me and has helped, because in terms of actually sitting and formally meditating, I've been using it just blanked out of my mind, the meditation program that was referred to last week.
Insight Timer?
Thank you. Yes, I've been using that for actually years, and you know, it's fabulous and it's wonderful, but it's a matter of remembering to actually meditate, which is in a busy day kind of escapes my attention altogether. But the thing that you said that has really been amazing to me is just to come back to breath. Because while I haven't been sitting and doing the 10 minutes of meditation that I have charted out on the timer, I have been at times just coming back to breath. Like if I'm driving and I feel a little frustrated in traffic, it's like, okay, just come back to breath right now. If the dog does something stupid, it's like, okay, just come back to breath right now. You know, and it's been really interesting in how it's a centering activity. So thank you for that.
That's great. And I'll also suggest too, I do this all the time, is to set reminders on your phone. I mean, you have to have a little tech, you know, a little understanding of the tech to be able to do that. But there are apps that you can download that are just reminder apps. Like you could literally go to the App Store and look up reminder apps and see what works for you. And it will, every day at 10 in the morning, it'll pop up and say, you know, remember to meditate, or just meditate. Or for me, I have different mantras that I have throughout my day, and they pop up, and I'm able to kind of, no matter what I'm doing, I just take a breath. I pause and I breathe, and I sort of breathe into whatever it says, whatever I've written, for it to remind myself. So it's another option to, in terms of how you can incorporate this in your life. But
I like that, because I do have the Insight Timer set for 12:30 p.m. every day, because I like a midday sort of break to meditate. But if it goes off and I'm in the middle of doing something, or it's not convenient, then it kind of goes by me.
Of course. Makes sense to me. Yeah. Thank you. Kathy, did you want to share?
Yeah, I will cop to not having done actual meditation every day. I got the stomach flu and was down for like 3 days. That was an interesting experience of mindfulness, because I was really trying to not like resist as much, you know? I mean, obviously you don't want to really embrace the stomach flu, but it was more of a like, okay, like, this is pretty crappy, but it's gonna pass, you know, kind of talking myself in a different way about the discomfort. I think that was helpful. And then I've been on summer break and doing a bunch of chores, and I've just noticed that I'm taking the opportunity to build mindfulness into like weeding and, you know, folding clothes, and kind of like Thich Nhat Hanh, like the everyday moments that you can just bring your focus to and try and be more present with.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, I do want to keep trying to commit to the actual meditation. I did it a few times, but I think that even just being able to like be more present in a few of those moments was helpful to me. And then a couple of family crisis things have happened, and I've definitely tried to use that like observer mind to step out a little bit of my anxiety and say like, okay, super anxious right now, and I can see that, and I don't, you know, that's not all of me, and just creating some space. That's been something I've been working on for a while, and it doesn't work in the moment of crisis, but afterwards, at least when I'm sort of managing the fallout, it seems to help me get a handle on and not get so wrapped up in those feelings. So I think it's been a productive week in different ways.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. That reminds me of, yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about everything we do, we can do mindfully. So if it's folding the clothes, you know, he will sit there and say, as he's folding, I don't know that he folds his own clothes. Well, at this point he doesn't, but at some point he did. And he would say, I am folding the clothes. I am folding the clothes. I am folding the clothes. And that was sort of what was going on in his head as he was folding the clothes. I know many people do meditation or mindfulness practice as they're brushing their teeth, because that's something you do every day, hopefully twice a day, maybe more. And so that's an opportunity to really be mindful. It turns out it gives you, you know, you do a better job brushing your teeth too, by the way, because you're doing it mindfully. And so you're noticing, oh, I skipped over that tooth, or I went too quickly in that corner of my mouth. And so it's just another opportunity, you know, thinking about when are those times, doing the dishes or doing things that many people do regularly. What you can do and how you can be in the present moment. That's just a practice, and just notice what it does, how it serves you in your life. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Kathy. It's great. Anyone else want to share? So I do want to just come back to Jordina's comment about the Facebook community, that it really is a lovely place for folks to share whatever they're experiencing during the week. Sometimes there's so much happens from one module of this course to the next that to have that support in between, thinking about what kind of support you might need to make sure that does happen. You can be as creative as you want on Facebook. Hey, who else has meditated today? Or whatever you want to do, it's your community. And as I have continued to say, it's your practice, it's your community. All I'm doing is pointing you to you. So that's my goal, that's my intention, and whatever that means for you. So I would like to go a little bit through the chapters just to touch on some key points and get, we'll do some activities together, but really thinking about what those first two chapters, chapter 1 and chapter 2, meant for you. And Kathy, you mentioned your observer self, your observer, and I'm gonna just throw that question out. Were folks able to sense your observer? And where might you have felt your observer in your body? Oftentimes when we see ourselves as separate from our feelings or our thoughts and all of that, we tend to have a sense of where in our body we feel that. We may not be paying attention, and so I'm going to invite you to actually pay attention to where is this observer? Some people feel it in their heart. Some people feel it in their gut, perhaps, in the center of their body. Some people feel it outside their body, perhaps behind them. Where is your observer, right? And so I invite you to consider that as we step into meditation in a few minutes. And then also to think about, what does it mean for you to consider that is who you might really be, as opposed to, I am, a professor, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a that, whatever, this is who I am, I'm a singer, I'm a, yoga instructor, like the things that we, the roles that we take on or whatever. What if who we really are is that observer? So I'm going to throw that question out for you and just see if anybody wants to respond. And I'm never going to require anyone to respond ever. So if something doesn't move you to speak, that's perfectly fine. But if something moves you to speak, feel free. We'd love to hear what you have to share.
I'd like to say that going back to observer consciousness is a relief for me. And I've done it before. It's been a while. I don't remember when or where. I just know that I've done it. One person I was reminded of in the chapter, Dina, I don't remember if it was 1 or 2, was Eckhart Tolle's work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I really, really liked his writing, his work. And so it was kind of a refreshing return for me that just felt good. And I really like the question, where is it? And for me, it feels like it's above my head. It's like I don't feel it in my body, but like right above my head. And yeah, I definitely was reminded with the list of the conditioned self, that somewhat exhausting and list that there's a lot of stuff in there that's like, oh, wow. It's quite an inventory. But, bottom line, it's just been like a nice, lovely relief to go back to that focus, which has felt good in the past.
Good, good. So I invite you, Holly, and whomever else this resonates for, to just feel what it feels like to sit in that space for 3 minutes a day. Just there.
Yeah.
Right. That's already a beautiful practice. That actually is more of what I tend to, how my meditation starts each day, is with that, is sitting in that space of who I really am, as opposed to who my brain says I am, or conditioned self says I'm this and this and this, Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else like to share?
Dina, I found it a little bit confusing, maybe. That might not be the right word, but I have a sense of my observer self as being in flux.
Okay.
I wrote in my journal that my observer is ever changing. Sometimes very nurturing, sometimes a cheerleader, sometimes critical, sometimes outrageously funny, sometimes outraged at what she sees me doing. And I go on to say, I think she's wise and much of the time patient with me, more patient and forgiving as I grow older. She's no longer tied to the beliefs of society and social norms, although those old cops still speak to her and me as well. I just hear her voice more clearly than I once did. And then I go on from there. But part of that is still that tendency to pass judgment. And I don't think that when you talk about the observer that you're talking about that. So I wonder if that means that there's a part of who I am right now that still needs work, because the real me still sometimes tends to be pretty judgmental. I'd like to know how that sits with you.
Yes, absolutely. And so we'll talk about conditioned self in a little bit, but that's really what I'm hearing. That's because our observer doesn't have a care in the world about that conditioned self, what the thoughts are and that eat away at us, or that tell us negative insights, or any of that. The observer self that has no focus on that whatsoever. So if that's what's coming up, and my guess is you're probably not alone in that, that's probably not your observer. And also not to worry that the observer for some folks can be quite scary, right? To think, wait, aren't I what I know myself to be? And what do you mean? This is the body that I'm in. Like, well, what do you mean there's something else? And I'm not suggesting that that's what you're thinking, but a lot of people will have that notion. They'll start feeling like, thinking about the observer self means that there's a loss, perhaps, of the self that they've known for their whole lives. And so it can be a little disconcerting for some folks the first time they get into that space of, oh my goodness, the energy around me. I mean, this is quantum physics, quite honestly, that we are made up of energy. And so the idea is that if we are made up of energy and our observer is part of that energy, then we're more than the thoughts we have. We're more than whatever it is we're telling ourselves about ourselves. We're more than our judgments. We're more than our emotions. All of that comes into play. So as we talk through this a little bit, just keep checking in to what's coming up for you, both emotionally, but also just internally, what's happening in your body as you are experiencing that sense of perhaps judgment or whatever else is coming up for you. Yeah. Anyone else before we move on?
Is that okay?
Yeah.
One of the things I think that I struggle with is I really like the observer when it takes me out of uncomfortable emotions, but I'm not so excited about like the fun emotions. I don't really want to be detached from feeling really proud of my accomplishments or feeling good about certain aspects of my conditioned personality that get a lot of rewards, so that I think there's something that in me that kind of resists this sort of saintly detachment concept when it comes to the positive things and feelings. But I really like it when it helps me, get a handle on the negative, critical aspects of my thought processes or feelings. So I don't know if you can pick and choose like that.
So you get to, because you're the one who, you're putting yourself in observer. Like, in other words, the observer this is my understanding, right? This is the way it resonates with me. Observer, we're always observer. That's who we really are. And yet we're living in this place, in this space right now, right? And so with that said, we have to remind ourselves. That's the mindfulness practice, is to constantly remind ourselves, oh, I'm not this. But if you decide not to remind yourself that and just be really physically present, that's your choice, right? Every moment of the day you have that choice. You just have to remember that you have that choice. So this practice actually is super helpful, like you said, when you are suffering, for example. It's really helpful to step back and be like, oh, I'm not my emotion. I'm so much more than my emotion. And what I have found is the more I've been able to do that, even in the happy times, my capacity has grown to really experience the present moment. So that I get what you're saying about the picking and choosing, but I find the more I'm in that what I call expansive space, which is sort of this observer openness, right? The more I'm in that space, the more love I'm able to experience, the more I'm able to give, the more I'm able to receive. So, there are, this is just sort of a nuanced way of thinking exactly about what you're referring to, right? And it's a process and a practice, right? All of that. So thank you for bringing that forward. That's beautiful. Yeah, that's great. Anyone else?
I wanted to also share, I was doing the week 1 module prior to this evening, and I was just looking at my notes because I felt fully connected as a presence without a body. And through the concept of the observer, I have found that as time goes on, the observer grows from someone, someplace, somewhere, sometime, to everyone, everything, everywhere, to no one, and no place, and nowhere, and no time. And that for me is just a powerful experience, and being able to think and to feel and to see beyond the physicality.
Beautifully put. Thank you so much for sharing that. So that is absolutely that. I mean, and that is challenging for folks, right? Again, if conditioned self comes into play, and we think of ourselves as who we are based on our social conditioning, it can be frightening to see ourselves not only as everything but as nothing. And so that's really that is a practice. And if for some of you, if that doesn't resonate for you, or you're like, no, that doesn't feel good for me, that's perfectly fine. There is no, this is your journey, right? So, and so my answer, Cecilia, if there was even a question, is really yes. It's all of that, right? It's all of these practices. Whatever works for you to understand that we are so much bigger, so much more than what we are taught to believe about ourselves. We're so much bigger than our stories and all of that. And so I do want to come back to this notion that if thinking or experiencing that broad openness or that observer brings up any kind of strong emotion you might consider as a negative emotion, something like fear or dread or panic even, or discomfort, that remember that we are taught to ignore this aspect of ourselves, that we are taught. We've had a lifetime of conditioning to ignore this aspect of ourselves. And so in this course, in this mindfulness journey that we're taking, we're kind of reminding ourselves what we have access to 24/7. We always have access to it. And we just have to remember we do. That's it. That's the practice. That's kind of the most important piece, I would say. One of the most important pieces. Was everybody clear on the Estrada's hand activity? I'm happy to do it with you. It only takes a minute for folks who either didn't get to it or didn't get a chance or were confused by it or anything. Would you like to do it together? So I'm not.
Sure. Yeah.
We don't have to. I can certainly move on. I just thought if it was something that would be helpful.
I found it helpful doing it by myself, so I would love to do it together. There might be more to learn.
Sure, absolutely. And every time I do it, I think, something new comes up. And again, coming back to that notion of beginner's mind that I talk about in the intro, and that's just, it's a long, ancient Eastern practice of coming to something as though you're a beginner with curiosity that, there's something here, just like you said, Georgina, that maybe doing it in community will bring about something different. So I really appreciate that. So the idea here is that we put our hands out in front of ourselves. So if you would just take your hand and put it out in front of you. I don't know if the camera can see. And to place your thoughts, your emotions into your hand. So they're in your hand here. And all our judgments, our these thoughts that our monkey mind that's going, in our brain, we place them, the negative emotions, the whatever we want, we can place into our hand. And then gently, slowly bring your hand to your face, all the way up until your middle finger is touching your forehead. And just notice that if you have all these thoughts and emotions going through your mind, and this is what it's like living your life blocked, right? You can sort of see through your fingers, but you can't see much. And so the mindfulness practice is literally pulling your hand slowly away from your face. And the thoughts and emotions are still there. They're still yours, right? You didn't give them away. They're still in your hand. You still own them. But look at what you can see now, right? It's so much broader. You can see so much more. And so that, to me, that's sort of a good metaphor for the observer self. That if we know we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, we are so much more than that, that's the mindfulness practice. So any thoughts or questions or comments about that from doing that together?
I kind of want to return to what Kathy had mentioned. And, Kathy, I may not be on the exact same track, but at times I feel as though the observer self is me, is the core me. And I feel so detached from the things that are happening. So it provides me with the strength and the ability to say, this too shall pass when something crappy happens. But at the time when something joyful happens, I feel as though I'm the one taking the photos rather than the one participating. And I've always seen that as a character default more than anything else. I've seen it as something, as a space of regret, that I'm not fully participatory, that I'm not in that moment, even though I don't even have the words to articulate this. I feel as though I am, and yet at the same time, I feel as though I'm just witnessing it.
Yes. And honestly, from my perspective, I know from what I'm hearing you say is that as a witness, you feel like you're not getting the whole experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a loss there. And so I want to say two things. One is that we are witnesses. Really, who we really are is witnesses, and everything will pass. For better and for worse, everything will pass. So sitting with that is already an existential nightmare, right? Just like, what does that mean? How do I make sense of that and all of that? Yes. So yes. And I encourage you to continue, meditating on that and marinating on it and think, well, what does that mean for me? And the second thing I would suggest for both of you who brought this up, Kathy and Georgina, is in that moment when a moment feels fleeting or you feel like I'm not getting it, I would encourage you very strongly to do in that moment a grounding practice. So maybe it's literally just noticing your feet on the floor, right? Maybe it's just being grounded in your body. Pay attention to what's happening in your body in that moment. And, the embodiment. So, I've really come to this place now where I believe that our brains know very little and our bodies know everything. Our bodies will tell you everything, right? If we were taught to pay attention to them, and in certainly westernized culture, we are not. We're taught not only not to pay attention, but to literally ignore our bodies. And so you'll hear me constantly say throughout our time together, you'll hear me say, how does it feel? Where do you feel in your body? How does it feel in your body? What do what's your body saying to you right now? What's it telling you? And it always has your truth, your deepest truth is right here in your body. So it's such a great tool to have access to, that we always have access to. So paying attention to that, I think, is helpful. And so in those moments, again, I invite you in those moments of like, I don't want to be taking the pictures. I want to be in it. Just notice what's happening in your body. Do you feel like you've gone somewhere? Is there some anxiety cropping up? What's happening to you right now in that moment? And that's maybe a place to marinate on a little bit too, right? So the work that we're doing here, and I want to say this now because it's only going to get deeper, folks. It's only going to get deeper. And that is that if throughout the course, and I did mention this last week, if throughout the course there are times where you're feeling a little more anxious or something comes up that you didn't expect, or that might bring up some anxiety, or whatever it brings up that you weren't prepared for. Just keep in mind, it's really important always. I strongly encourage you to have some support in your life. Like I'm happy to be support. I know folks on, that we're building a community. You can certainly find support on Facebook as well. But also just if you have your own support system. So if you have a therapist or a counselor or a coach or someone in your life that you turn to when you're feeling a little anxious about things, this may be a good time as you are in this mode. Many of you are in the mode of transformation, right? You are in transition in your lives. And so thinking about what kind of support do I need? And you know what? This is such a great practice to ask for guidance, ask for assistance along the way. We are also, in the westernized world, we are taught that we are supposed to be able to do all of this alone. And one of the reasons I wanted to do the course in the way that we're doing it is to build community. And I think that's critically important. But aside from that, having your supportive communities around you, I think is important. So just know that if that comes up, it's not unusual for this course to bring up some stuff that, either you didn't expect or, oh yeah, there that is again, and we're going to have mindfulness practices along the way that will help you in terms of finding peace, even in those moments. So I hope to provide that support along the way, but also knowing that you have access to other folks in your life, I think is important. Yeah. Any comments or questions or anything before we proceed? Okay. So I want to invite us into a meditation. And this has to do a little bit with thinking about the figurative hand in front of our face, a little bit about what is stopping us, perhaps. What is stopping us along the way from living our whole full self? And we're gonna, this is gonna be a running theme as well. When we know what stops us, we can actually break through and have these incredibly transformative moments. So I'm gonna invite us in to another mindfulness practice. And so if you could find your feet on the floor, if that works for your body, and just come into a place of pausing. Notice what's going on in your body right now. Maybe take a deep breath to begin, and let go with whatever has come up for you so far. Just come into a space and a place of peace as much as possible in this moment. And I'd like you to consider, what story about yourself would you say is this figurative hand in front of your face? In other words, what I'm asking is, what's the story that keeps coming up in your life that stops you from living your full self? We get reactions from people. We in our interactions, maybe there is some anxiety or some story that stops us, that inhibits us from living our fullest life, but also interacting really deeply with other people. Maybe it stops us from accomplishing all that we really dream about. I mean, I was told I was selfish, so I spent a lot of time really worried about that, and that got in the way. That was my figurative hand in front of my space, in front of my face. And so I invite you to consider what comes up for you in that moment. And as always, where do you feel that in your body? Where do you feel that story about yourself that you were taught? This is not a blame game. This is no shame. This is no judgment about what you've been taught about yourself. It's just noticing, oh, this is a story that I have. And it's gotten in the way. It gets in the way. Notice where you feel it in your body. I invite you to take a deep breath here and ask yourself, how might you use Estrada's hand activity, pulling your hand away from your face in your mind, to let go of that idea? What would it take? What would it take for you to let go of that story? And then I invite you to think about what you learned about yourself in terms of the gifts you have to offer the world. Because these gifts have nothing to do with your story. The story that you were taught about your selfish or your whatever story you were told personally about yourself is stopping you, could be potentially stopping you from using your gifts in the fullest way you possibly could. So I'm going to ask you to consider the gifts you have that you are either born with or learned along the way. What are your unique strengths and talents? What comes easy to you? Perhaps what have you been told you do very well? What are you most proud of about yourself? What do you have to offer the world uniquely? Just you. What lights you up about yourself? Sit with that feeling just for a moment of being lit up by your own gifts, knowing what you're capable of. Notice where you feel that in your body. Take another deep breath here. And exhale. And if your eyes are closed, go ahead and flutter them open. And I'm going to invite you to open either your journal to that part of what we did was mindfulness practice number 5. And so that is on page 9 of your journal. If you've already written in that, you've already done that, feel free to use your notebook, whatever you have with you. Just take a few moments and just share with, for let go of whatever has come up for you. Do folks need more time? I'll give you one more minute and we'll move on. Great. Does anybody want to share what came up for you? Okay, I'd like to take some time just to talk a little bit about this conditioned self. This is, you know, it's been written about in a million different ways, and this was my version of it, obviously, right? And the underlying question is what's challenging about learning about those two aspects about ourselves? You know, what's challenging for you? I think about conditioned self really began to form when we were very young and we're taught the rules about who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to show up. And it was usually taught with a side of shame, right? That we were taught, you know, if you don't do it this way, if you aren't, you know, you're not doing what you're supposed to, you know, and so shame comes up with it. And that's a hard, I mean, that's, lots of therapists say that shame is the hardest one. It's the hardest emotion to kind of break through because it goes so deep and it's the thing we just don't want to look at. I mean, Brene Brown has a whole career based on looking, you know, learning about and studying the notion of shame. Yet it's usually at the heart of some of the most profound breakthroughs, you know, that we can have is when we actually touch on the shame and realize, oh, I was conditioned this way. I don't have to feel shame about this anymore. You know, these things stick with us through adulthood unless we take steps really to acknowledge the vulnerable emotions, feel them deeply and let them go. And that's later in the book, we're going to actually be doing a little bit of that work. But, and underlying all of this is this notion of social justice. So I want to bring that into the picture too, because I've been, you know, the beginning of the book really focuses a lot on understanding some of these main concepts about how we are in the world, right? And learning about that, about ourselves in that way. And then, you know, we start to expand and think about, well, what does that mean for me to be in the world with the social identities that I have? And so that's going to be coming also. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week as well. We're going to actually take a dive into that kind of stuff. But was everyone clear on the blanket, you know, the blanket covering the inspired self? Conditioned self is like a blanket over inspired self. Were you know, I did the best I could in the book to try to make that clear. But if for some reason you didn't get it quite, it was the idea. And so if you hold up one fist, right? So feel free to join me in this, is holding up one fist, knowing that this is your inspired self, right? And then this is conditioned self, this blanket, this flat hand that comes over surrounding your inspired self. And this is all the social conditioning, the ego, all of that stuff that comes up. That's also the oppression and the crap that's happening in the world today and all of that. It literally covers us over. This is never gone. Our inspired self is never, it's always there. But for some folks, and I'm not going to name political figures right now, but I know, you can understand they're so covered, right? Their inspired self is so covered in ego and in social conditioning that they don't even know they have access to that inspired self. And so if we know that this inspired self is really who we are in our heart, like that really who we are, then all of a sudden, and through mindfulness practices, we can kind of peek through, right? We can peek through the ego. And then this ego, this conditioned self as the blanket gets thinner and thinner. It will never go away. And the goal is never to try to erase our social conditioning. That's not what we're trying to do here. That's not what I'm trying to do. It might be what you're trying to do. My thought is social conditioning allows us to show up in this space at this current time and to be able to communicate with people who we need to communicate to, right? If we're going to build relationships with other folks, we're going to be doing so in this particular time and space. And so it's not to ignore that. It's not to ignore that social conditioning or say, or judge anyone else for being so caught up in that social conditioning, but rather just to notice. And really our job is for ourselves, right? To notice how often does social conditioning come and wrap itself around our own inspired self and limits our potential, limits our capacity to fully be ourselves, to fully engage in relationships, especially across difference. What is the social conditioning that you've been taught that is causing that to happen? So that to me is like kind of the heart of chapter 2. And I'd love to hear thoughts or ideas or questions about any of that. Or answering the question that I originally asked, which is, what is challenging for you around thinking about both of these, these notions?
Yeah, I think as I look at what my future might be, and I have all of these options, that I'm inspired, but I'm also fearful of the energy that it's going to take to go into a new community and start over and not let all of this inhibit me going in this way. And like you said, there's a need for some of this, right? But it takes me, and I know this seems really strange for most people to hear me say, but it takes a lot for me to actually let my true self come out. I'm a firstborn, and I have a lot of baggage around wanting to be well liked and perfect and give the right impression. And the only impression I would like to be responsible for in my new life is this, that's what I'd like to take forward. And when I do, I'm at my best capacity in terms of letting my light shine and feeling truly present and being enthused about life. But I'm like, oh God, am I too much? And then I start to do this, right? So, that's a lot of my fear that's bound up with, in 2 years, uprooting myself and going someplace and starting over. I should do that at 65. I mean, really? Come on. Am I Meshuggah? That's kind of what goes through my head. And this part of chapter 2 made a lot of sense to me. It really, really resonated because I think that's where I'm battling some things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing that too. And that notion of too much and my age might get into play and all of those pieces, those are stories. Those are stories. And again, that's this, right? That's the figurative hand blocking you from, I better not be my full self. I better not show up fully as my true inspired self. Because what will people think, you know? And so again, it's such a, thank you, Karen, because it's a beautiful example of the ways that we all, right? We all find ways of minimizing ourselves, right? And not living our best lives, or whatever, however you want to refer that to that. Because we've been taught not to. We've literally been taught, we've been conditioned not to, right? Stay inside the lines, right? And you get, dinged in whatever way that might look, in your social conditioning, in that process of socialization. We get dinged every time we color outside the lines. No. We get policed in that way. And here's an opportunity. We don't have to live that way. We don't have to live under those rules anymore, really. Yeah. So hopefully that is something that gives, it took me, up until, the last 5-10 years to realize, oh, I don't have to live by someone else's rules. Wow. What does that mean? And what could open up for me then, right? So I really appreciate that. And then we're gonna, again, these are all the things, this is sort of intro into some of these pretty intense ideas and thoughts, but I felt like wanting to make sure that everybody was clear on that, what social conditioning is and how it plays out in our lives. And knowing that it's such a profound part. Like once you start seeing it, experiencing the world with that context, you can pick it right out. You can say that person is, perhaps suffering from an overabundant ego right now. And again, without judgment necessarily, but more like, everybody's on a journey. Everybody's experiencing, I believe that people are living at the highest capacity they are capable of from their teaching, from what they've been taught. And so if we can learn something different, we can change our whole paradigm. We can transform, from where we were, from living small to what might it look like for me to live large. And that, yeah, that's what I'm interested in. Where's the juice? Where's the juice? Where's your juice? Yeah. Anyone else like to share? Mm-hmm.
I'm reminded of the teachings of John Bradshaw. He was my huge recovery teacher, one of my biggest. And in terms of shame, I don't know if any of the rest of you used any of his work, but I was an enormous John Bradshaw fan, student, reader, studier, etc. And that was one important part of that is, looking at my parents, of course, and how they trained me, and really getting how full of shame my mother was. And I like what you write about forgiveness, Dina. It's on page 34. Forgiveness to me means letting go of the spiteful anger, animosity, and negativity that threatens to eat us alive if we sit in it. And then you have somewhere where instead of give for, you switch the word around, give for, and I liked that. I really, really like that. So I wanted to thank you for that. But yeah, shame's just been gargantuan in my recovery work, and having some understanding around where my mother was, around never telling us about this ugly history in our family, that has been a huge part of my healing and forgiving too, because that's a huge part of my journey. So I wanted to say that. Thanks. Yeah, I really like your forgiveness stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to share with you something that happened to me out of my meditation this morning, which just blew my mind. I was thinking about my own journey, which y'all, anybody who's read my preface knows how intensely horrible it was. For the beginning of my life, my childhood. And I woke up this morning out of my meditation. I literally said to myself the words, "Wow, I've had such a beautiful life." And I heard the words come out of my mouth, and I was thinking, who just said that? Wow, how, That's all forgiveness. That's all that is. It's a lot of work around forgiveness to be able to say, for me to be able to say that and not say it with my, like sarcastically. Wow. So I say that to say this stuff, like really forgiveness is such I think is a really important part of all of this. And a lot of that has to do with the practice of non-judgment. That's a mindfulness practice in and of itself. And so, and it's a big, it's huge. I mean, it's huge, especially if we've all had challenges in our lives. I'm sure of it. I'm sure everyone have whatever level or whatever and we're not here to compare. I don't do oppression or pain Olympics by any stretch. We've all had challenges in our life, and what might it mean? What might it look like to forgive? It has nothing to do with the person or people who did harm to you. And it's not forgetting that happened. It's none of that. It's literally, I don't want to carry this burden. I don't want to carry this social conditioning, this weight of what I've been taught anymore. And that's a choice we get to make and live differently. Yeah.
So I actually have a question around this, and Holly, thank you for bringing this up, because this is the one, everything that I read resonated with me, and I don't think I understand forgiveness. I think maybe the issue is that at heart I don't get it. I almost feel as though the act of forgiving is me myself passing judgment of some sort. And I don't feel that that's my place, because that it's not what I want to do. And so I honestly, I've had this conversation before philosophically with a lot of colleagues, and I just don't get forgiveness. I almost feel as though that's not up to me. I mean, I get to decide how I advance my life from this point onward. But I truly don't understand what forgiveness means.
Yeah, I think you just said it. My understanding of forgiveness, the way I've used it in my life, is exactly what you just said. I get to choose how to move forward.
Okay.
I'm not passing to, it has really, and this is so hard for folks who, I mean, I'm speaking about myself, not that long ago, 5-10 years back. Forgiveness was not an option, because I thought of it in the sense of, I have to say it's okay what happened to me, what was done to me, that I have to say it's okay. And when I learned that it had nothing to do with the people who did anything to me, it had, like, forgiveness has nothing to do with them. It has only to do with me. What do I want to carry for the rest of my life? I don't want to carry that pain. And as I was saying before, I get to choose. And that's really what you said, Georgina. Like when you said, I don't understand forgiveness, but I get to choose what to do. Like, to me, that's it. That's it. You got it. I mean, from my perspective. Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions or anything before we close tonight? So we'll close out with a final quick meditation, and just a reminder, again, Kiva will send out another email with, although you probably have it already. So for this coming week, it'll be chapters 3 and 4 to read. The week 2 information will be up and available. It should be already, so that you can have those meditations to practice throughout the week. Please commit to at least 3 minutes a day, whatever that looks like. It could be split up. So Kathy, as you were saying, like maybe it's, maybe you're in line over here and you practice mindfulness for a minute, and then another minute over there in traffic, and another minute, while you're brushing your teeth or whatever. That's fine. Just bringing it, incorporating it into your life is what I'd really like to see. And then also, as you know, that that you're all welcome to sign up at any point from now for the next 6-7 weeks, whatever we are out, for a 45-minute session with me. And the Calendly link, the link that will send you right to my calendar to do that is Kiva has sent out, and I should probably send it out again. So I look forward to that. And that's really just one-on-one time. If there's something that you have questions about or struggling with or whatever, or an aspect of any of this work that we're doing that you want, you know, private time with me, that's open and available to you. Okay, let's close out with a quick meditation, if you would. Once again, finding your feet on the floor. And take a deep breath in here. And exhale. And as you notice your breath, I'm going to invite you to see if you can extend your exhales a little bit longer than your inhales. And some people like to count, you know, maybe a count of 4 inhale, and then maybe a count of 6 or 8 exhale. If that works for you, if that resonates for you, feel free to do so. If that doesn't work for you, just notice how short or long your inhales are and try to extend the exhales a little bit longer. Just notice what that feels like in your body. What we know scientifically about how the body works is that if we can extend our exhales longer than our inhales, we're actually calming the parasympathetic system. It actually can, just by doing that, can bring a heightened sense of peace to our bodies and into our lives. One more deep inhale. When you're ready, exhale. Once again, hand to heart. I got you. I got you. I got you. When you're ready, go ahead and flutter your eyes open if they're closed. Welcome back. And I thank you so much for your time and your engagement. I am just so overwhelmingly filled with gratitude for each and every one of you and your sharing of yourselves with me and with each other. Have a beautiful, beautiful week ahead. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Take good care. Bye, everybody. See you next week.